Welcome back to the Jump Labs podcast, the show for founders and coaches who want growth without the guesswork. Here we're mixing data, AI, and real talk about systems that drive predictable growth. Today's guest is Mark Gordon, founder of Integrated Go-To-Market Solutions, where he's helping companies who plateau between that $10 and $30 million mark in revenue and rebuilds their growth engines from inside out within 120 days. Super interesting conversation I've been looking forward to for some time. Mark, welcome to the show.
Oh man, thank you so much for having me. I love the introduction, and I'm really excited to be able to share some things with your audience that hopefully they can implement and use in their businesses.
Super excited, brother. I want to start by taking us back to that first aha moment that led you to create IGTMS.
Yeah, so I was an executive in the mortgage and real estate space for most of the last 20 years, and COVID was really kind to us. And then after COVID, rates went up, and I was just started my 40s, and I was still in build mode, but with rates going higher, it was kind of a wait and see time in the mortgage industry. And I decided to take some time off and kind of figure out what I wanted to do next. While I was on that journey, I started helping some friends and family build their companies. And what I realized is that when you're in a commodity based business like the mortgage industry, all we have is marketing and sales because the product is the same. Every mortgage company in the country in the US selling the same Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, VA, USDA loans. Okay. And so all you have to differentiate yourself is sales and marketing. And when I got into these other businesses where there was some product differentiation, I found that people were really lacking some of those marketing and sales skills, and also kind of the insight in how to get your messaging out to the world, how to differentiate your messaging. But then the real moment for me was I had a bunch of really smart founders who were very committed and very hardworking who could not, in a couple of sentences, tell me what they did or who they did it for. And then even sometimes if I spent weeks coaching them, they still couldn't concisely tell me who they did or what they did it for, who they did it for. And really it was because they were trying to do too much for too many people or didn't know how to really guide their company. And then unsurprisingly, when you ask their teams, who do you guys serve and what do you guys do and who do you do it for? I was getting the same kind of weird reactions. And then when I helped people clarify that, it was like prior to those conversations, they were in a canoe where one of the paddles was broken. They were going in circles. And as soon as we brought that alignment, it was like they were really going straight forward. And so bringing those things together, I realized I was onto something. And that's when we decided in June to really launch as a company. And so far, the results have been amazing for our clients.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. What makes me, the question I'm thinking about next is if a company is at that 10 million, $30 million mark, you're thinking, okay, they're churning and burning, but you're working with them when they're stuck. Why are they stuck at that stage? Why
Well,
typically?
it really depends. I think we talk about revenue sometimes in a way that is confusing because some businesses can be really complex at 10 million because their average sale price is $1,000. And some businesses can be a lot less complex if their sale price is $100,000 or $200,000 to get to that same place. But what I'll share is that the skill sets of founders need to change drastically through each stage as they grow their businesses. What I mean by that is that at the beginning, you're a leader kind of as a solopreneur. Then maybe very quickly you become a leader with 10 helpers. You can go really far as a leader with 10 helpers. You can build a very successful, profitable business that way, but you can't scale. In order to scale, you need to be creating an environment where other people understand where the company is going, understand that direction, and then are both motivated enough and talented enough on their own to be able to take that clear vision for where we're going, a piece of the pie, and drive that forward on their own. And so what I find a lot of these companies get stuck, it's because they have a team that was talented enough to get them there. And maybe their knowledge base was good enough to get them to where they are. But now either everything is falling on them as a founder, or they've outgrown the expertise of their teams and their teams have not felt like they had the authority or the inspiration to go find the next group of problems to solve. So everybody kind of gets comfortable with where they're at, or they get stretched beyond what their capabilities are. And so we come in as a company and figure out okay, is there limiting behavior here of the founder? In other words, do they have to still be involved in every single deal? Are they at capacity for what they can handle? Are they unwilling to delegate in some way? Right. And then if they are willing to do those things, do they have the right team structure? Do they know where to invest in their business, who to bring on next, what key employees they need to be driving? There are bottlenecks that just come up inside every organization. So that's one of our hardest parts of selling what we do, is that I'll put together a plan after a couple of meetings with you for what these 4 months are going to look like. But then after I go in and meet everybody on your team and meet the marketing agency that you work with and meet the people, your partners that you're doing this with, oftentimes our plan will radically change because it turns out the bottlenecks aren't really where we thought. They're here, here, and here. We have to go in and change what our strategy and plan was. But at the end of the day, we can move very quickly to deliver very different results. Each founder has their own limitations with their own experience. Each team has its own strengths and weaknesses. What I would say is that after going in and looking at so many companies, those things are very obvious to me when I get in there. And what's even more surprising is that once I say them, they're usually not unobvious to the founder, but they're things the founder was willing to ignore, right? We have these negotiated truces in our lives as founders because there's only so many things that we can focus on at one time. And if something's uncomfortable, hey, I really like Joe. I don't want to replace him, or it feels unfair because he got us here. And now all of a sudden we're going to be layering him. And it's like, you have a commitment to your vision for where the company is going to go. You have a commitment to the employees that you sold on joining you for where you decided that company was going to go. It's your job to make the tough decisions and address the things that need to be addressed in order to take that company to the next level. That has nothing to do with Joe, right? And it's why I never, it drives me crazy when people talk about their employees and their companies as families. Families are forever and we don't choose them. And companies are professional sports teams where we can have an amazing season or two together, win championships together. But if you can't help us right now, next year, get to where we want to go as the goal for this team, then it's time for you to move on to a team where you can be a part of what their next mission is, or it's time for us to bring in somebody else who can put you in a role on this team that's more commensurate with your current abilities or willingness to do the job. And so when you start thinking about it as a professional sports team, and people are like, well, well, Joe and I have been so close forever. I can tell you, I have Giant season tickets in the NFL. They bring back the 1990 Super Bowl team, the 1986 Super Bowl team, and those guys all get together. They haven't been on the same team together for 40 years. They're still close friends. They still this amazing journey together. That journey has been a huge part of the rest of their lives, but they're not on the team anymore, and that's fine. Right. And so if you build something special with somebody, you don't lose that experience because you've layered them or moved them onto something else. You guys will always have that. You guys should be able to go grab a beer and celebrate the championships you won together, but you owe it to everybody else on your team to continue to make the tough decisions to bring things forward. And so, again, I kind of went all over the place with my answer there, but I'll just share, once I get into a company and meet everybody on the team, these things become so obvious. I have a client I'm working with right now, and we're still in the stage of me trying to set the meetings with the people internally. And I can already see problems because there are certain people who don't want to meet with me alone. There are certain people who want somebody else in their meeting with them. They're already trying to, like, you can see, trying to protect themselves from they're worried about what I might find. You can feel it even just in the meeting setup. And so again, as a founder, you're very in your own world, your own perspective. You have these negotiated truces, and you're trying to address the one or two or three problems that seem most important. But often we end up addressing the one or two or three problems that seem most urgent. And so when we get sucked into what's urgent over what's important, then that's when you need somebody from the outside to come in and kind of do that redirection and get a fresh look at it. And so, long story short, there are very specific patterns you see for why companies get stuck, but every company has their own unique story, which is why you need somebody to come in there sometimes with fresh eyes, who can really assess the situation and help you make the changes that are gonna kickstart it. And by the way, that's another reason why we only do 4-month engagements, because I'm gonna give you everything I can see or know in 4 months that you're gonna be able to implement right now. And it's gonna take you a year or a year and a half to do all the things that we're gonna talk about, right? And then maybe 18 months from now, we do a new 4-month engagement. Maybe you went from 5 million to 15 million. You're stuck here. Cool. Let's do another 4 months and see how we go from 15 to 30. But I don't need to be with you on that entire journey in order to make that happen. We can come in, we can put a plan together, help you set up to implement and live that new plan. And then when you hit your next bottleneck, we can come back in and help you solve that too.
Yeah, you did mention a lot there, but man, there were multiple mic drop moments. I love how you changed it from family to professional sports team because now you say that and it's like, that makes total and complete sense, especially when you reference the Bang Bang Niner gang. And it's like, you're right. Those guys were greats in their own time, but they're not going to be great now. It's a completely different landscape. Personnel changes,
It's a
not just
different
the core,
sport,
but
right? Like
yeah,
the sport we're
completely.
playing changes over time, right? Or it'd be like, hey, listen, we won, in soccer, right? You get relegation, right? Hey, we went from a team that was here to we won our league championship. Now we're in the next league. Well, if your organizational goal is to get up again, is to get promoted again, right after the next season. I don't know if you follow any of the soccer club stuff in Europe, but you're going to need better, different players. You're going to have a whole different economic model. You're going to be making more money now because you're in this next league. So you're getting more opportunity. You're going to need different players to continue that goal. No one's ever going to take away the championship the old guys won, right? They own that championship they won is forever. The team that got you from 0 to 10 million, you guys will have that as an experience together forever, right? But it might not be the team, especially the way it's currently structured, to get you from 10 million to 100 million, and that's okay, right? And it's particularly okay if, as a founder, you know this going in and you're willing to have these conversations like, hey, I hope I hired you as a head of sales forever. I hope you grow with the role, but just so you know, my commitment is to $100 million a year in revenue, not to Joe. So Joe, we're gonna give you every opportunity to succeed, but if I need to get somebody else in over the top of you at some point who's done this before or gets us to the next level, we're going to do whatever it takes, because my commitment is to continue to create an environment where the company is growing, which I believe offers more opportunity to all of us. And if you say that to people up front, then you can make those tough decisions when you get there.
Yeah, it's good to plant that seed early, have the expectation there early that this is still the priority. You're going to help us. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the bang up way to do it. It'd be tough, I imagine, if you started it from scratch and they went into it with a different expectation. But man, I love the sports analogies. For those listening on Apple and Spotify, you don't see, but Mark has a bunch of sports memorabilia around his office. He showed me a little bit on our pre-call. Mark is a man's man, so that's something I really enjoy about this conversation so far is all the sports analogies. Mark, you did talk about how your system is intended to run without IGTMS. I also like how your clients don't renew, they graduate. That's something totally rare because most people want to have that. Of course, they want to have that almost an attachment or a dependency when any other outside console comes in. So you're very rare, you're very different. What's an example of a company coming out as fundamentally a brand new or completely different company that you had in the past?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's hard to pick one, right? But I'll just share, there's a company I worked with a couple years ago, and they had a really great product. In fact, when I evaluate a product or a service, there are kind of three components, right? And we can add in some smaller ones, but the main three are better, faster, cheaper, right? And I always say if you have one of those three things over your competition, you have a decent chance to make it as a company. If you have two of those three things, you should be crushing it. And if you have all three, you shouldn't even need a sales team, right? Like if you really have all three, if you're really better, faster, and cheaper than everybody else, you need a sales team. This is a company that had a product in a huge regulated market that was better, faster, and cheaper. And they were losing money on a monthly basis. Part of that was because they were investing in their growth in the product. It was a technology product. And they were losing money and they were not getting new sales. And so they brought me in to kind of sort of assess the situation. And when I got in there, it became very obvious. It was a sales leader who was not only just really a salesperson, but had developed their reputation off of a few key strategic relationships in the industry. And they weren't doing any of the prospecting or activities needed to continue to grow those relationships. They certainly weren't capable of building a team or setting up a team structure to get it to the next level. And so the entire organization was being held hostage by this sales leader, who, by the way, had been implanted by the person who had funded the company, right? So the CEO did not even have the control at that point to make a decision on that person, because the person who gave the company the money was like, this is the guy for the sales leadership role. And so it became a huge process and project for us to build out marketing processes around this person, build sales around this person, and get some sort of traction we could see. Then we could show the investor that this wasn't the right person to get traction somewhere else. And then that led to us helping that company hire a brand new sales leader who was operating at a completely different level. And so that 4-month journey we went on to get some traction, get some proof of concept, and work around that person, that company went from, let's say, losing $300,000 a month to making more than $1 million a month. Their valuation went from around 20 or 30 million to 150 million. And I actually believe this company would be worth $1 billion 3 years from now. And they're a company, by the way, that I will probably come in very soon and work with again, because they're at another bottleneck. That bottleneck is not about that sales leader. He's still awesome, but they need help in the marketing channel, right? And getting more qualified leads for that person. So, they're radical changes, right? But it took somebody from the outside coming in and going, hey, you have a situation here that's real. You feel you're actually stuck. We need to work around this to get some proof of concept so we can go back to and just alleviate that problem. That's a problem they never would have been able to navigate on their own, most likely, because It was too complicated politically inside the organization. That person, that CEO, was not a sales and marketing person, so they didn't have the expertise to really work around that person in that way. And so we came in and freed that up. That's maybe a more complicated case. Sometimes it's just, hey, we had an organization that was founder led sales for 20 years. The founder retired. They hired a new CEO. They hired a head of sales, a head of marketing, spent $800,000 on ads and their salaries. And after a year and a half, those people had brought in zero new clients. Zero.
Mm.
We signed with them, and 120 days later, they had already landed 6 new clients in the first 120 days of working with us after a year and a half of signing up nobody. The head of engineering for that company said to me, he goes, "You did more for our sales and marketing in 30 days than we did on our own over the last 30 years." And maybe he was being a little bit hyperbolic, but it what suddenly he remembered as an engineer there what they do and who they do it for. We changed their entire website, their public perception, the messaging, the imaging. We then send that message out to a very specific ICP that we were able to drill into, because they're like, we can sell to anybody. I'm like, well, you shouldn't sell to everybody, because you can't do a really good job for everybody. Who are the 2 or 3 people, companies, archetypes that you're crushing it for right now? It turned out it was this. We then got the data for those companies. We mapped out who the decision makers were in those organizations. We developed specific messaging for each persona inside those organizations. And suddenly the phone was ringing. And by the way, and then we taught that new CEO how to sell, because by the way, he's a very natural salesperson, but had never been taught before. We put some structure in place, and suddenly the deals were just falling in, right? And by the way, then they had to become a completely different company, because suddenly they went from, hey, we have these clients we serve, to, hey, we're onboarding a ton of new clients. We have a ton of volume coming in. And so they went through a whole different process, right? And I brought in somebody else to help them with the organizational growth they were experiencing from that marketing and sales. So the long and short of it is, I think whenever we're running a company, by the way, this is my story. When I started my first company, I was in my 20s. I built a multi-million dollar mortgage business. And I was convinced that nobody else in the world understood what my company was doing, how it would work. I never read any books, never talked to any experts, never talked to any consultants. And I was like, those people aren't gonna be able to help me. They don't understand. They don't understand what we're doing. And you think you have this like unique snowflake that nobody else gets, and you feel very alone. You got to go figure it out. And that behavior over 5 years, I estimate, cost me tens of millions of dollars in valuation, millions of dollars in profit. And if I could just have me go talk to me then, I'd still probably be running that company, right? Or I would have sold it for $100 million. I really believe that. And it was after that experience when I went and worked with Princeton Mortgage and the CEO there, Rich Weidel, who was younger than me and smarter than me, because he'd read every book on earth, would talk to every single consultant, had all these different people he talked to, and he hadn't even done anything, and he was so much smarter than me, right? In terms of, because he had just went about it a different way. Right. And that was a really transformational experience for me, spending 6 years working with him, because then I went and read all the books and met with all the people and did all the stuff. And suddenly I had a language where I could easily teach all the things I had learned through pain and millions of dollars in losses and all the other things that I went through, when I exited that company, and a framework where I could help other people. And so if you're a founder listening to this and you're like, oh, I don't know what to do next, it's like, you're not supposed to. And by the way, you're in the fire. So like, everything feels like a bigger deal. You don't want to take chances. You get analysis paralysis. Your team's putting pressure on you. Like, there's fires everywhere all the time. Sometimes it's really useful to bring somebody else in, especially if it's at a reasonable cost, who can go like, hey, I've seen what you're going through, this little stage right here, a dozen times before. Here's what works. Here's what doesn't. Here's the vendor to bring in. Avoid these 3 vendors that stink. Bring this one person in because they're great. They'll deliver this result. And like, you just kind of move the chess pieces around on the board. And suddenly you wake up in 4 months and you're like, dude, everything's working. I'm like, I know, because you were much closer than you thought, but you were never going to see it on, right? And that's a lot of what we do for these companies.
That's amazing, brother. There's another line that you dropped in there when founders say, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. And then you just say, you're not supposed to.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like, yeah, we start these businesses, founders, we're all trying to figure things out. But then, of course, we've never been there before, trying to get someplace we've never been. Maybe we can make better use of our time and energy and effort if we had a navigator. So, man, that's a bang up line you just dropped there. You talked about hiring, firing multiple VPs of sales. For these situations when you have to let go of somebody, is it typically just because the person that's the VP of sales or head of marketing or whatever, they got to a certain stage, they have something that works and they're just unwilling to evolve? Is that typically the case of why the business stalls?
It happens. I don't know that I would use the word typically. I think most often, especially in high growth companies, The biggest reason sales leaders fail is because companies that are figuring it out hire sales leaders from companies that had it figured out. And so let me kind of walk you through what I see all the time. You're a SaaS company that sells, something in the e-commerce space to help e-commerce people convert more business. Okay, that's your SaaS business. So you go and hire somebody who is a sales leader with a ton of success from Amazon, right? Because who knows e-commerce better, or from eBay, right? And you're like, wow, and this guy's got this track record. They were promoted 5 times. They went to Wharton. They're like, oh my God, this guy's going to change everything for us. And this may be counterintuitive, and I don't know if this is going to resonate with people, but I promise you, I see this all the time. That guy is a brilliant person at operating inside of an existing bureaucracy where the walls are already there. And really, what you need to do is be the kind of person who is smart enough to operate inside the framework that's already built for you and deliver better outcomes than the other people who are also doing that thing. By the way, I don't know that I'd be the right person for that. It's a very specific skill set to be able to navigate corporate bureaucracy, to be able to play that game and operate inside of all these rules and bureaucracy. When you're in startup mode, and by the way, 10 million for a lot of these guys is startup mode still, you're trying to scale. Your infrastructure is completely unbuilt. You don't know where your next lead's going to come from. The CRM isn't optimized. The leads, you don't know where they're coming from. You don't understand the quality of it. The vendor goes out of business that does this thing for you. You don't have the replacement. You're now making executive level decisions, right? On a regular basis, on a small scale that impact everybody on your team. There are no rules in place. There is no bureaucracy. There are no walls. It's like you're in an open field and you have all these different choices. And those people are not built for that. In fact, if they were the kind of entrepreneur that was built for that, they probably would have gotten fired from Amazon, right? Like it's actually a very different skill set, right? Like it's hey, are you a builder, a creator, a find the walls, a build the structure person? Or are you the person who, once you understand the rules of the game, is amazing at playing the game? And so those are two very different things. And so, I see this all the time. It's like the board of directors for startup X is like, you got to go get somebody with a ton of experience. So they hire some, and by the way, this is not me being ageist. I'm getting older myself. We hire some 58-year-old dude who's got 25 years of experience, who's like, this is going to be my last hurrah, man. I'm getting out of the game. I want to build this thing. And it's like, hey, like, and they've been operating. They don't even, by the way, you don't even realize what it does to you to operate inside a bureaucracy like that, right? Because you're just like, hey, of course I'm successful. I'm doing all this stuff. Look at my results. Look at this. And you're like, actually, like you were already on a rocket ship, right? Like you're already at Amazon. Like the rocket ship's already moving. You're navigating a ship that's already going at 1,000 miles an hour in the same direction. Maybe you're a great driver, but I need somebody who knows how to fix the engine, right? Like it's like, and so like that's a very different thing. And so that's, it's really just hiring the wrong person at the wrong time. I made a post about this last week. You'll see these job descriptions. It's like founding account executive or founding go-to-market person. And the job description will be like, we want you to be our dial-up SDR, our our account executive, our CRM builder, our builder of pricing and processes, figuring out how to market, work with our marketing agency, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, by the way, starting salary is $150,000 a year with on-target earnings of 250. And it's like, if you found somebody who was good enough to do all that stuff for you at the same time, they wouldn't, because nobody who's at a level where they want to build all that stuff is also going to start dialing like an SDR. Like they're just not going to do it, right? Because there's too much pain and rejection involved in that process. If you have the responsibility of doing all this other stuff, it's too mentally exhausting. But if they could do it, that's $1 million a year role. They go start their own company. Why do they need to come work for you? And so, and certainly they're not doing it for $150,000. And yes, you will get applicants. You'll get 1 million applicants, right? Who, by the way, will have one piece of that pie that they're focused on. They'll let all the rest of it fall off. And by the way, unless you're willing as a founder to pick up those other pieces, or you have some plan for that, you're going to stall. I see it all the time, right? And you also need somebody who's smart enough, based on the sales conversations they're having, to be able to give feedback to your product team so they know what they should be prioritizing as we go forward, right? And so this is like really high level stuff. It's the stuff that it's the difference between companies who get to 10 million or don't, or get from 10 million to 100 million or don't. And so when you hire one person, unless that person has a specific track record of doing all of that stuff at the same time together, they're really likely to fail. past performance is the biggest indicator of future performance, right? And by the way, so like, and by the way, they'll also, another thing I see is people will overhire for like specific industry experience versus specific figure it out and build experience, right? Like, I would rather have somebody who's built 10 companies in 10 different industries that is not my industry, and I'd rather hire that person, or even 3 companies in 3 different industries, than somebody who's had a very specific journey where they were working for a bigger company specifically in my space, right? Like, we overvalue specific knowledge versus the personality and capability of being able to grow in an unstructured environment. And so that's my best answer for that.
Yeah. Oh man, this is so good. This is so
Man, I
good,
really
man.
appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, this is good. There's a lot to unpack here. But I know we're getting closer to a little bit of our time, but what does scaling for IGTMS for you? What does it look like for 2026 and beyond?
I'm glad you asked. So we officially launched in June. My goal for this year was to land one new client per month, and that would really help us fuel our growth and figure out our processes. It looks like we're going to be there. Maybe we'll be a little bit ahead of that, depending on how the next month or two shape up. My goal is then to reinvest in the company in a major way, which is to bring on a team that next year, this time, is capable of bringing on one new client a week. If we can get to that level, which I think that we will, and I'm starting to see a very clear plan for how that's going to play out, then essentially what the plan next would be is to continue to grow that from there and to continue to bring other fractionals in who maybe aren't great at bringing on their own business or don't understand how to grow their companies, but are really great at doing the work. And then we'll probably buy or build some agencies that serve what we're doing for our clients. So right now I'm bringing in a ton of other agencies. We're bringing in LinkedIn agencies, cold email agencies, a Meta agency, a Google agency. We're bringing all these different partners to do all that stuff. I think if we can get to that one client a week, we'll then probably either buy or build those agencies internally and then continue to serve our clients in the long term from there. Always with our core product being our best clients don't renew, they graduate. Because I believe that if you are a coach, a consultant, or even a therapist, right? Like really like we're talking about like therapy, if your clients aren't learning enough from you over a 3 or 4 month period, that they don't need to go do some self work for a while to get to what they're learning from you and build that, then you're making them dependent on you on purpose, or you're not very good at the job. Like by the end of month 3 with my clients, they are in complete overwhelm, right? We've changed a bunch of things in their business. We brought on this, we brought on that, and they're like, "Hey, dude, like, cool, let's go figure this out." I'm like, "Yeah, call me over the next month or two if you have a question. We can tap in, whatever." But like, go build this stuff out. Go continue to work with what we've already set up here. Leads are coming in, the sales team, make sure it all works and balances. And then when you're feeling stuck again, call me, right? And so that to me is at the core of what we do. Now, can do I think we can do a better job than some of the other marketing agencies or partners out there in delivering some of those services in the long haul? Yes. And would I love to be able to make more money doing it? Sure. And so that's why we'll probably get to that. But at our core, we just want to continue to keep going up market. You know, one of our clients for next year that we've already have a commitment from is a foreign company doing $1 billion a year in sales that wants to break into the US market. That'll be a year-long project for us, not a 4 month one, but still with the same intent of graduation. And so as we continue to go up market as well, yes, we want more clients, but also we will continue to get bigger clients with bigger budgets and bigger aspirations as we go forward as well.
Amazing, brother. Well, that sounds like a lofty goal, but it sounds like you also have a pretty solid concrete plans on how to get there, at least the start of one, of which, of course, plans always have to fluctuate. Brother, where can people find you?
Yeah, I'm hopefully very easily. I am Mark D. Gordon. Mark D is in Douglas Gordon on Instagram. Mark Douglas Gordon on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is like where I'm definitely the most active. And then, but if you look up Mark D. Gordon and IGTMS or go to igtms.com, which is integrated, go to Market Solutions. You can also find us there. If you are a business owner, even if you're not if you're at 2 million a year, or even if you're a little bit less, but you have big aspirations and you want to grow, my Calendly link is out there. Book a call. I'd love to meet you. I'd love to see where I can help you. Even if we don't work together today, I think I can provide a lot of wisdom and help in that half-hour call that might help you get to where it wouldn't make sense for us to come on board. But I also just really love meeting other entrepreneurs who are excited about what they're doing, and I have time for those conversations. That's by design. So if you're out there and you're like, hey, I don't even know if I'd be a good client for Mark, but I think I could get a lot out of a conversation, good call. Let's do it. And if I get too many calls, then I'll stop doing this. But until then, I feel really good about it. So certainly, I'd love to meet with you.
I appreciate that, Mark. Thank you so much. So, Mark, you dropped a lot of nuggets on this call. A lot of golden bombs, a lot of bazookas, a lot of everything. If you want to follow Mark, you want to touch base with him, LinkedIn is where the primary channel is at. Again, he's opened his calendar to have a conversation with you. If you want more stories like this, be sure to subscribe, tune in for more. We're bringing on great leaders like Mark all the time. My name is Jay. Thanks so much for listening to the podcast. We'll talk again soon. Take care. Bang!
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.